Hi, right, welcome to this video. Right, ratios. So, I'm going to start with an apology. This is going to be very talky. I know a lot of my videos are quite talky, but this one is going to be pretty much out there. While I try and explain my understanding in basic English of ratios, how to calculate them, which ones sound good, which ones don't, and so on. So, where do I start? Let's talk a little bit of theory stuff first of all. Let's just turn that down for now. So first thing we want to kind of think about is the relationship as we kind of go up the octaves in our notes, and the hertz, and kind of what happens to the number of hertz on each octave. So if we let me find where are we? Okay, so A4, right? So that's kind of a common sort of note to start off with when you're tuning something. And that's A4 is 440 hertz. So that basically means that's how many cycles it has per second. So what happens is if we go up an octave to A5, all right, the number of hertz doubles. So A4 would be 440 hertz. A5 would be 880 hertz. If we go down an octave, the number of hertz halves. So if I go down to A3, that's going to be 220 hertz. Okay, so what we've got to think is with when we're using our ratios, it uses what's called an exponential curve rather than a linear curve, and that's quite an important thing to think about when we're calculating our ratios, which I'll explain in a second. So if I just kind of demonstrate what an exponential curve means, I've done a little kind of graph to plot on here. Now I've made up a new note, which is J, which doesn't exist. Okay, so don't go and try and find the note J on your keyboard because it don't exist. I'm just doing this for ease of maths. Okay, because this gets very mathematical, and it's been absolutely driving me mad the last few days, kind of getting my head around this, and I think I've finally got it. So let's say the note J1 is at 50 hertz. Right, so if we go up an octave to J2, it's going to be 100 hertz. It's then going to double to sorry, I've got the numbers wrong already. That's J3. Is going to be 200 hertz. J4 is going to be 400 hertz. J5 is going to be 800 hertz, and so on. So what happens is that's called going up exponentially because it doubles each time. So if I plot that on this graph, okay, so J1 at 50 is going to be there. 100 is going to be there. 200 is going to be there, 400 roughly there, 800 kind of roughly there. If we did J6, it would be like 1600 would be right up there. So you can see the curve is going up like that. All right. If it was a linear thing, where if it went up, say, by 50 each time, okay, so it would be 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and so on, it would go up in a straight line like that. Okay, so that is a linear curve. This is an exponential curve, so it kind of goes up like that, and it kind of works if you go down an octave. I mean, obviously you can see it halves. So if we went from J1 to J0, it would be 25, and then 12.5, and so on. Okay, so that is our exponential curve. Now the reason we need to understand that is to do with our ratios. So I'm going to come back to that in a second, and I'll get on to a little bit about the ratios, and then we're going to talk sidebands and all other sort of nonsense. So let's get back. Well, let's bring the notebook back for a second. This is going to get used a lot in this one. So our ratios are basically the kind of like the relationship between the carrier and the modular. Modular. I'm looking at my modular synth up here. That's why I said that. Modulator is what I mean. So there is our, let's say there is our carrier, and there is our modulator. So if these are both set at the same octave, because we can pitch these up or down, that would be classed as a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, so if we pitch up our modulator, let's say 12 semitones, which is an octave above where it was originally, that would be a 1-to-2 ratio. Okay. And the ratios can go either way. If we had the modulator at its basic pitch, not transposed anywhere, and we transposed the carrier up 12 octaves, that would be a 2-to-1 to 1 ratio. And I'll give you some examples of these in a second so you can hear, because they do sound different. Okay, a 1 to 2 ratio that way is going to sound different from a 2 to 1 ratio, because obviously it's modulating at different pitches and so on. I think a lot of things where this gets sort of a bit confusing is if you think, okay, so if a 1 to 2 ratio, that's up 1 octave, surely then a 1 to 3 ratio means this would be up 2 octaves. But no, it doesn't, because of the exponential curve. What you've got to remember is to go up an octave, it always doubles. Okay, so if we wanted to have our modulator kind of twice as a 1 to 4 ratio, so start again. If we want to get our modulator to be 2 octaves above the carrier to modulate it, it would have to be a 1 to 4 ratio. So you would need to pitch that up 24 semitones. All right, I'm going to come on to 1 to 3 and 1 to 5 ratios in a bit. Like I say, you may need this. The video is going to be fairly complicated. You may need to watch it several times to get your head around it. But what you've got to remember is when you go up an octave every time, it doubles. So if you went up 3 octaves on your modulator, that would be a 1 to 8 ratio, 1 to 16, and so on. Okay, so let's give you a few examples of those. I'm just going to load a track in where I've just put a few things in, which is, no, wrong one. That one. Right, so I've got various different ratios set out on here. And what I'll try and do in the description is I will put all the settings that you would need on here for the different ratios on the Deluge. I'll explain a little bit more about those in a second, because there's so much to cover on this, and I apologise if I'm sort of jumping around a little bit. Right, so let me just get my notes for this one so I can remember what I'm talking about. So the top track, the red one, it's a 1 to 1 ratio. Okay, so if we just go into that synth oscillator, all I'm using is oscillator 1, not using oscillator 2. Oscillator 1 is not transposed at all. FM mod, I'm just putting a tiny amount in at 15, and that is not transposed at all. And I'm not using FM mod 2 either. Okay, that's at 0. I've just got a slight bit of attack just to get rid of any clickiness at the beginning, and a fair bit of release just so we hear a longish kind of note so we can hear the differences. So if we play that one, that's got no kind of ratio effect at all. Might help if I turned it up. Okay, so that's just using a tiny bit of modulation from FM mod 1 affecting carrier, which is oscillator 1. If I go down then, so the blue one is a 2 to 1 ratio. So if we go in here, what's happened for this one to get a 2 to 1 ratio is oscillator 1, which is the carrier, has been pitched up an octave, and the FM mod is where it was originally. And then the pink one is the opposite way round. That's a 1 to 2 ratio. So the oscillator has stayed where it is, and I've pitched that up an octave, which is 12 semitones. So if we listen to the differences between these three. So if we start off with, okay, no ratio affecting that at all. If we go on to the 2 to 1 ratio, okay, you can hear it sounds a bit brighter. We've got more overtones to it. And then the 1 to 2 ratio, again, so you can hear that they do sound quite different. A 1 to 2 ratio and a 2 to 1 ratio are going to sound different. Just to kind of illustrate it further, on these two, I've got on the greeny one is a 4 to 1 ratio, and the yellow is a 1 to 4. So for doing that, that's been transposed up 2 octaves. Okay, so 24 semitones. So if I have a listen to those, so this is the 4 to 1 ratio. Okay, and a 2 to 1, sorry, and a 1 to 4 ratio. Okay, so straight away you can kind of see that the different ways round of doing the ratios between the carrier and the modulator is going to give us different sounds. So I was going to concentrate on this one for now. So basically what happens is when we change the ratio, it's kind of all about changing the pitch a little bit, and it creates what are called sidebands. Now I've got over on Ableton Live, and I'll switch over to that screen in a second. I've got EQ8. Let me just move my microphone around so I can see my Ableton Live screen. Sorry, microphone issues. So we've got EQ8 on here. Now it's picking up a bit of the microphone because I'm recording through here as well. But if I play just the basic no ratio thing at all, okay, we get that. Now if I just take the modulation down, so we've got just the pure sine wave. Okay, so hopefully you can see that pure sine wave. I'll stop talking so you don't get the bits on the lower bit of the frequency. Okay, and it's got a long release, so you can see that dying down as we play that. Now, if I just start to modulate that, you will see additional kind of harmonic things appearing up here.
Thank
Okay, so you can see all these extra harmonics appearing up here, and that's kind of mangling up the waveform and adding all these extra harmonics in. Now the ratio kind of adds even more. It sort of adds what are called sidebands. So if we think of our basic kind of sine wave pitch somewhere here, it will add sidebands, which is basically extra pitches either above that or below it. So to demonstrate that, let's just check I've not got too much. So I'm going to take that back to where it was. So I'm going to have 15 on modulator 1, and what we'll do is we're going to pitch up sorry, we're going to increase the pitch of modulator 1, and look what happens on the spectrum analyzer as we do that. Now, if you notice, when we're starting to come up, I've only pitched it up 2 semitones at the moment, we're starting to get some sidebands down here. We're not hearing these yet, but you'll hear this kind of sub-bass coming in a second. Okay, so hopefully you can hear that. We've sort of got this extra note around here. Let's go a bit further. Okay, so we've got the original note around here. Sorry, I hit 2 notes. We've got kind of like this sub-bass note that's coming here, and then we've got extra frequencies coming up along the top. And different amounts of pitching up on the semitones will sound different. Some will sound very kind of dissonant and out of harmony and a bit nasty, and others sound really nice. Let's go a bit further. So that's at 5 semitones. Okay, so that sounds pretty good to me. So hopefully from that you can see that we've got our original note. I'll play the sequence of that. I'll just turn it down a little bit just so we can see what sort of notes we've now created. So there's our original note at C3. It's now sort of created a sub-bass note at F1. And then we've got all these extra notes, A1, A, D4, and so on. So let's take that up a little bit further. Okay, so that's at 6 semitones, sounds a bit dodgy now. Okay, 7 semitones is sounding nice. That's actually if I remember rightly, a fifth, the perfect fifth. So if we play that one, let's see what notes we've got. Okay, so we've got the original note there. And that's created for us a sub-bass. Okay, down here we've got a exact octave lower there, so which is why it sounds nice, because everything's kind of in harmony together. Okay, so just pitching up by 7 semitones creates all these extra notes and sounds quite lovely. So 8, 9, 10. Then when we get, now if you see as we go above 7, we're sort of losing that sub-bass. It's coming up a bit more on the scale until we get to an octave up, when that bottom note is now merged back in with our original note over here, and we're just getting upper sidebands rather than any lower sidebands, and that's taking it up to an octave above. So hopefully that kind of demonstrates how we use the ratio settings to create these different harmonic things. Let's just keep going up on this. Okay, so 19 semitones sounds nice. Now that is actually a 1:3 ratio. I'm going to explain how to calculate these in a second. Okay, if we go up to 24 semitones, that's a 1:4 ratio. And a lot of it is about, don't worry too much about the ratios. I kind of think is if it sounds nice, it sounds nice at the end of the day. Now I'm just going up in whole semitones. We can go up in cents as well. So if you want to kind of do a bit of fine tuning, or I mean, you can go even lower on the increments. Okay, and obviously it's getting a bit more bell-like now as we get further up. Let's go up. Now, if I remember rightly, I think 31 is a 1:6 ratio. 36 is obviously going to be a 1:8 ratio. Okay, so it's getting brighter. It's adding a lot more kind of high-end sidebands in there. So if we go down, our original note is there. Pitching that up on a 1:8 ratio. Okay, and obviously we can transpose up the other one as well. But what we'll do is, if we take this one down, let's have a look how it works the opposite way around. And we'll pitch up the carrier this time. So if we go up 7. In fact, let's just go up like in increments so you can hear it. So you can hear that sub bass coming in again now. So you can see some sound really nice, some just sound out of tune because of the way it's creating these additional harmonics. And you'll also find that some work better like at lower octaves, sound nice, and then they sound a little bit dodgy at the higher octaves. So at 12 semitones up, that's a 2:1 ratio. 3:1 ratio. So let's leave it on 3:1. Obviously we can then, mess about with the feedback. Obviously modulation amounts. Okay, so getting almost a little bit like harpsichordy. So they're very kind of plucky, stringy, metally kind of noises. But also some really nice bass sounds as well. So that's basically what you use ratios for. It's just to create these more rich, harmonically nice sounds, for want of a better description. So a couple of things just if you kind of want to work out what your ratios are. But like I say, what I'll do is I'll try and put a load of the ratios in, like I'll go up to like, I don't know, 1:8 or something in the description, so you know what you've got to transpose up by. If you do want to work it out yourself, there's a few, hopefully you'll be able to see this on my iPad. There are a few good like little things I've found online that are very useful. First thing I would do is, let's say I'm in C, okay, and I want to work out what a ratio would be. Let's say a 1:3 ratio. So how many semitones do I need to increase that by? So what I would do is, this is basically I just did a Google search for what are the frequencies of musical notes. Generally, I think C4 tends to be classed as middle C. I know some people class C3 as middle C, but generally on this it seems to be C4. And I'm seeing different things. On here it's actually saying the frequency is 261.63. If I just zoom in, hopefully you can see that. I've seen some websites that say it's 261, some that say it's 262. So, take your pick. You can round it up or you can round it down, or you can be very specific like that. So if we wanted to take that up to a ratio of 1:3, basically what we would do is we would multiply, let's say 262 by 3. So let's just do that now. Let me find my calculator on here. Okay, we'll just use an online calculator. So if I do, let's say 262, I'm going to round it up. I multiply that by 3. So that's giving us a frequency of 786. So we could go back into here and kind of roughly try and find 786 or something close to it, which would be, I would say, the G on that. It's slightly different because obviously we've rounded it down, but it would be a G, but that's kind of like an octave and a half and above. So if we counted up from C to an octave above, sorry, an octave and a half above, let's just do that on the mini log over here. So if we started here, we've got to count how many semitones it would be. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, and that's why a 1 to 3 ratio, you would take it up by 19 semitones to get that ratio. Okay, so it's a bit of a long-winded way around of doing it, but that's how I've kind of been working it out. There is a very complicated maths equation thing which I don't understand, like 2 to the power of 1 to the 12th kind of thing. So I do it this way. If I want to work out my ratios, I'd just look at my starting note. So if I was going to start on D, for example, I would multiply 293.66 by 3, find out which ratio note it is, and then pitch it up like that, so on. But I'm going to do all this for you in the description. So yeah, I mean, in terms of ratios, what I would do is to start with is just stick with whole ratios like 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, and so on. This, I came across this on KVR Audio, which again, what I'll do is I'll kind of copy this across. There's a useful little chart here that tells you the ratios for each semitone. So, for example, at 0 transposition, it's a ratio of 1. Obviously, hopefully we can see. Let's just zoom in a little bit. At 12 semitones, it's a ratio of 2. So if you were going up 7 semitones, it's actually a ratio of 1.49831. So yeah, to calculate how many cents that ratio would be, we'd put the ratio in here, and it's 1.49831. This actually converts it into cents. So if we calculate that, sorry, you've done it for me. It's saying 700 cents. So basically, 1 semitone is 100 cents. So if you divide that by 100, obviously it comes out at 7. So that ratio, if we wanted to use that ratio of 1.49, you would transpose up by 7 semitones on the Deluge, which is, you know, the same as we've got here. Okay, so it's telling you that in there. So that was a bit of a pointless exercise, but just to show that it does work doing it that way around. So we could also use this to calculate it the other way round. So let's say if you want to find out what a ratio is, if you find something that sounds nice, so let's say you've gone up, let's say on the Deluge you've transposed something up by 19 semitones. You think, oh, that's nice. I'd like to remember and know what that ratio is, because you might want to use that ratio on another bit of hardware or another bit of software that actually has ratios where you can put them in without having to kind of transpose it all. We could put that in here. So if we convert 19 semitones into cents, that's we just multiply it by 100, so 1,900. We calculate that, and it's coming out at a frequency ratio of 2.999. So you'd round that up. Okay, so it's a 3. So that would give you a 1 to 3 ratio. So hopefully that sort of makes some sense. Sense, I should say. There's a gag in there somewhere about cents and semitones, but I'll shut up. Yeah, it's confusing, and I apologise if on the first watch this, a lot of this makes no sense to you whatsoever, because it didn't to me, and I've had to watch a lot of videos through many times and read a lot of stuff online to get my head around it, but it was something I sort of really wanted to understand. So that's, again, another limitation, I think, with the FM synth on the Deluge, is that you can't just put in I want a 1 to 2 ratio or a 1 to 4 ratio. You've got to kind of do this bit of mathematical thing to work out how many semitones it is. The other thing is just do it till it sounds nice. You know, a lot of it is about experimenting with it, and then you can always go back and use these converters if you want to work out what that ratio is. Because I know synths, like I think there's the FM8 VST synth, which a lot of people use, and it has like a box or like a matrix where you can put in your ratios. So, you know, you might think, okay, I want a 1:4 ratio, and all you just type in is 1:4. So it's a little bit easier than doing it on the Deluge. But this is quite a good way of learning the maths and the stuff behind it. So I'm going to leave that there. Now I've confused the hell out of everybody. What I'm going to do probably in the next few series of videos is I'll do a bit on sound design, and I'll just sort of create a few sounds using all of the stuff that I've done in the previous 3 videos on this. And that really I find is the best way to learn stuff, is just mess about with it, basically. Okay, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, please stick them in the box below. Don't moan at me, please don't moan at me for this being confusing, because I know it is. Just keep watching it through a few times and you'll be fine. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.